or was it something else, Walter?
Yeah, it actually began more with reading ancient writings because so many ancient cultures had talked about this phenomena of the stars moving across the heavens, which we call precession, and they tied the rise and fall of civilization to it. And it wasn't just one or two. It's now been documented that over 40 cultures have this common myth that of a long lost golden age that ages rise and fall. It's the Greeks term it the Iron, Bronze, Silver, and Golden Age. The Indians call it the Yugas. Mayan, Hopi, other cultures have different names for it. But they all sort of tied it to a change in the heavens that we call precession. And so, it really began to bug me as being more than coincidence. It's mentioned in more than 200 myths.
Mm.
And so that's when we began to study it very seriously about 10 years ago or so, 8 years ago, and began to realize that the precession phenomena, where we, look on the date of the equinox and see the stars don't quite line up exactly like they did the year before,
Mm-hmm.
that is actually the observable of a solar system in motion rather than just a simple wobbling Earth.
What is it with the precession that affects mankind and even civilization then? Is it a continuous a catastrophe that comes and goes, or what is it that affects it?
I don't think so. No, I don't think it's a big catastrophe at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's just simple, waxing and waning light. For example, Heinrich, we know that the cycle of day and night is very dramatic. It's driven by the Earth spinning on its axis, and when we face the sun, we're all in a waking state. Photosynthesis occurs. There's lots of activity on the planet, and when we face away from the sun, 99% of the population goes to sleep. Actually, goes into a subconscious state. So this simple little first motion of the Earth spinning on its axis changes consciousness. We go from waking state to subconscious state, every 24 hours.
Mm.
And again, the second motion of the Earth, it being on a slight angle, 23-degree angle as it goes around the sun, this Earth orbit has dramatic changes. It affects all plants. Trillions of plant forms spring out of the ground, bloom, and then give their fruit and decay again. Billions of other creatures will migrate or spawn or come out of hibernation, go back into hibernation. All these things are caused by celestial motions and a waxing and waning of light. So too, if there is a third motion, our whole solar system, going closer to and farther from another point, and stellar objects are huge emitters of electromagnetic spectrum, light, and therefore I think if it does have an effect, it would affect our ionosphere, our magnetosphere, and have profound changes just because of the waxing and waning of the electromagnetic spectrum.
It's known that our brain carries its own electromagnetic field, and do you think that might be the relationship here, that because of or depending on the activity on the sun, even our own awareness might go up or down, so to speak?
Yeah, I do. I think it's all tied together, and I'm not saying that we have really firm hypotheses yet on how this occurs, but there's a lot of anecdotal information. For example, SAD, seasonal affective disorder, is something, when they don't get enough light, people are affected here. And some people are very sensitive to it, and some aren't. and so yes, this we are very sensitive to these changes in light, and they can affect our mood and even consciousness. Matter of fact, there's a gal at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. She's a professor of physiology, a former professor, Dr. Valerie Hunt, and she wanted to see what effect it had on people when they were removed from the electromagnetic environment of the Earth. You know, the Earth sits within a magnetosphere, and this magnetosphere is bent and warped by the sun every day. You know, it sort of forms a teardrop shape around the Earth, with the short end of the teardrop facing the sun and the long end facing away. So it's always changing as the Earth spins. And so she took some patients. She put them in a room called the Mu room, and it's a Faraday cage where they use this room to make very sensitive electronic devices and to test electronic equipment when they don't want any interference from, you know, television waves, microwaves, and cell phones, stuff that's running through the environment all the time. And it also even separates people in the room, if they're in there long enough, from the ambient electromagnetic cocoon of the Earth, if you will. And so she put them in there. She gave them tests to do. She wanted to see how people performed on the tests. But the really remarkable findings were, not only did people do a little poorly on the test after being in this room for long periods of time, but they actually cried. And so they described their feelings to the professor when they got out, and they said that they felt threatened, that they felt as if there was something wrong, but they didn't know what was wrong. And it was a universal sense that people got when people are separated from this natural environment, EM environment that we live in. Things happen.
Wow.
And so I think that that's kind of what's going on in this binary system, assuming we are in one, that as we're very distant from a certain point in space, there's a positive influence, a sweet influence that is sort of lacking. And then as you get closer, just as you get closer to, say, a radio tower as you're driving in your car, you get better reception. And so, in effect, our planet is driving around a huge track, and we're going closer to and farther from a radio station, which has beneficial effects for Earth.
Oh, that's really interesting. So there's a number of things that we can tie this in with. Obviously, we have the question of the weakening magnetic field of Earth itself. That seems to come and go, and I've at least heard that apparently in the last couple of years or so, or maybe 10 or 20 years, I can remember exactly. We're talking about large, big cycles or big timelines here, but that the Earth's magnetic field actually has been weakening. Do you know if that's true or not, Walter?
I've read that information, but I really don't know too much about it because I haven't done the research firsthand. We do know, Henrik, that the magnetic pole of the Earth will wander, and it wanders anywhere from about 10 to 40 kilometers per year. So its location changes just slightly. And we do know from geology that, you can tell the polarity of stones, that the poles have flipped now and then, magnetically flipped, not the Earth flipping over anything, but just the magnetic change. And this has, definitely occurred because you can see it in the rocks by polarity. So, I wouldn't doubt that it changes from time to time. I think the average, somebody said, was like every 600,000 to 700,000 years it seems to flip.
And so what are some of the parallels here if we talk about some of the civilizations that seem to have come and gone? There's various ones in South America. There's various ones in in Europe, maybe even North America and Asia as well. What are some of the most interesting kind of correlations here that you've found, Walter?
Well,